Hi, Paulo. Hi, Laura.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi. I'm fine.
Hi, Andy. Hi, Maria. Boyan. Hi.
Hello, Draško.
Hi. Oh, many people are here. Okay. Monica is here. Izada, Rita, Rafsha is here. Margot, Juna.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Paolo.
Hello, Maria. How are you?
I'm good. You? Hi, everybody. Sorry.
Maybe we should wait for maybe 1-2 minutes more. I think that most of the people who registered are here, but there are still some missing. So I just wanted to inform you that this will be recorded. I guess everything is, that would be fine with you, because we would like to share it later on as a recording for those who are not able to join us. And maybe this is the moment to introduce Manon. She will be facilitating this webinar. So Manon, you have the floor.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Well, don't open your mics, but just nod if it's all right. Great. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Manon, and I work for IPPF EN, and I will be the facilitator today for this webinar. So as you know, today we're presenting the first part of a two-part webinar series. And we'll be discussing the YCA, so the Youth-Centered Approach Toolkit. Next week, on Thursday, the 2nd of July, at the same time from 11 a.m., we'll be talking about the second part of the webinar, which will be dedicated to the coaching process. And so obviously we hope we'll see you there. The aim of the session today is to increase the member association's awareness on the importance of including young people at all levels of work, and also to strengthen the YCA in the European network. To do so, today we'll be welcoming 4 speakers. First, we have Doortje Braeken. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right. Doortje is consultant and the former IPPF senior advisor on adolescence, gender and rights, programs and technical at Central Office. She'll be addressing today how to get the best from the new YCA toolkit. Then we'll be welcoming Paulo Pericho and Alice Brito from our association in Portugal. Paulo is the associate director and Alice is a youth volunteer. Together, they will present the main benefits from the YCA initiative. And finally, Dražko Kostovski will take the floor. He's the lead of the youth unit at IPPF EN. Sorry, and he will go through the results from the YCA initiative. After the presentation, we'll have a Q&A session to conclude. But before I give the floor to Doortje first, I'd like to remind you of a few rules that we will observe during the webinar, so everything goes as smoothly as possible. So you should have it on your screen. I will read them out loud, but you can read them yourselves. So please keep your microphone off while the speakers are speaking until you're invited to speak by the facilitator, hence myself. If you have any questions, please enter them in the chat box. We will try to answer most of them, but if we don't have enough time, know that we will take your questions into account and we will try to answer them after the webinar. If we still have time, you can join the discussion, and as it's written, please use the feature raise hand, so you can see it if you go on the participant icon on Zoom at the bottom of your screen, and then you can join the conversation. If the internet connection is not good enough, I will ask you to turn off your video, but not everyone has it, so it should be okay. And again, for the questions, please try to keep them short and concise. And obviously, respect for everyone in the webinar. I think that's all for me. Thank you very much. And Doortje, you have the floor now.
Can I see the good morning, everyone. I hope you're all happy and healthy this time. I'm going to talk a little bit about the toolkit and how you can use the toolkit. And I was very, very happy to be able to contribute to this fantastic initiative. And I want to tell you a little bit what the elements are of the of the background of this initiative. If you can go to the first slide, yeah, is what already was said before, to promote, of course, this youth-centered approach in IPPF and how the tool could contribute to that. And then very much what I think is very important is that there's so much knowledge in the member associations also in Europe that we thought we have to tap on all the expertise there, not get external people out, but inside, but get more people who already know. And that's for that we developed a tool which we thought was the most democratic way of mutual learning, which is the coaching process. Okay, the next one, please. Maybe it's very good to go back for one moment about the whole journey of young people in IPPF. I started the process, I think it was before most of you were born actually, but okay. So in the 1980s and 90s in IPPF, there was absolutely not so much youth participation. People were already proud that it didn't turn young people away from the services. But I have to say it was the MA of Ireland who really pushed for get more involvement of young people in IPPF. And why they did it in the beginning was very instrumental. It was very much, oh, we need to make youth programs for young people, so we better ask their advice, which was quite still a bit condescending in a way, but it was a way of involvement. And very quickly already, we decided this is wrong. This is wrong. If all these programs are there for young people, it's not just an instrumental thing. Young people have the right to participate in their programs and have to have a say. And in that time, that was in the 1990s, they already started to think about this percentage of 20% of the board members to be under 24. That's from that time. So that was very much about moving from involvement to a much more participation and democracy. And we thought, oh, we do a really good job. But then we found out with some evaluation of programs that actually we were not there at all. We had to think much more carefully about how really to empower young people in the organization, not just if they are in the board or when they are in a youth group, but everybody should be able to be empowered and have the right to participate, whether you're a client, a recipient, a volunteer, everyone. And for that, then we developed this whole youth-centered approach, how you can make youth participation part of the genes of a member association and of IPPF. Next one, please. So that's very quickly, that's what I tried to explain. So it was an ad hoc participation, decision making, and then as we understood, we have to have a very good, well-functioning, independent youth group to really get democracy and empowerment in the organization and have it much more systematically. So that's a little bit the journey where we are and what also we wanted to really promote in this whole initiative and especially also in the toolkit. Next one, please. Now, if you look at Europe, I think there's a lot of diversity, and I think you know that much better than I do. But maybe sometimes in the past you could think that maybe EN started a bit later than other regions, but actually you have moved much quicker than any other region. You are very, many more self-organized youth groups. You do quite a lot on peer education and also peer provision. And you have young people in governance, and you have already give young people different roles as advocates, as researchers, but mainly as also as innovators. And if you have the Y-Safe, which is so active and so positive and so innovative. So I think EN has moved really, really a long way. Now, next one. Then we thought, okay, if we read, there was also an initiative in IPPF a couple of years ago to get much more tapping into the expertise of what MAs already have, instead of all the time hiring external consultants. Well, there is so much knowledge in IPPF and people understand how a member association works. And then we decided, and that was a discussion also with Frasco, is how can we have the most democratic way of mutual learning? And coaching, and we're not going to discuss that now, but maybe next week, what is coaching is really a very systematic way of mutual learning, where there is not a power dimension, where you are equal partners, but where you can learn from each other. But where you do it, not just, oh, I give you some nice advice. No, where you do it in a very systematic process where you both learn and you both progress. So that's why we decided to go for the coaching process, and especially the group coaching process. And we thought this is really about a democratic way and an equal way of working together between member associations. The next one, please. How did we develop the toolkit? We had 2 meetings, and that was, now I hope I say it right, with the member associations of Kyrgyzstan, Albania, Cyprus, and Germany, and with Y-Safe. And in the first session, we really looked much more deeper. What actually do we mean by youth-centered approach? What is actually a good working youth group? because we thought that's first we have to get very well before we're going to say how we're going to do the whole learning part of it. So what we did, I developed something and then everybody contributed, and in the second, people started to look whether it worked. And then we had a second meeting where really people could be very critical and much more saying, well, this is what should be in the toolkit. This is not good in the toolkit. We have to change things in the toolkit. You have to give more advice on this or on that. So that's how we developed it all together. And we had a lot of help from all the staff from the office. Drasko was really a hero, but everybody else was a hero as well. And then it was beautifully designed, which I think is a very important thing as well. So that's basically how the whole toolkit was developed. Yeah, do you see this? Sorry, I was a bit late with the PowerPoint, but I think I discussed this already. You see, so there were two. So there are 6 modules in the toolkit. And I think I'm very proud that it's also in Russian. And you will see that most of the toolkit is really going more in depth what is actually an effective way of looking at the youth-centered approach. Really, how do you put it in practice? And to explain very much what a youth-centered approach is, and not in a very theoretical way, but in a very practical way, with checklists, with advice, with case studies, and with examples. So the first 5 modules in the toolkit are very much about the role of young people in the member association. How do we see young people? What is our conceptual framework of a youth-centered approach, as practical as possible, I hope? How do you get a good self-organizing youth group without all the pitfalls? Who is organizing it? Who's initiating it? How much power does the MA have? How do you remain democracy within a youth group as well? And then very much also for other organizations, how do you start with youth participation in the organization? What are the conditions that need to be in place before you can really have an effective youth participation, which really is about democracy, social inclusion, and gender equity and accountability. And then the last module is, okay, if one member association can help another member association in an issue they know maybe a little bit more about or have a longer expertise on, this is a way not just to give advice, but slowly helping step by step to change the organization. So for instance, if it's very difficult to get a self-organized youth group and one other member association has one, they can support the other member association step by step how to do that. And for that, we also developed all kinds of tools to make assessment where is the low-hanging fruit, what you can change first and what you can do. So you have a lot of tools to do so. Now, the last slide. Now, of course, if you take a toolkit, you think, oh, shoot, what a lot of pages. So we made a kind of navigation, a kind of roadmap. So we give the possibility to select the modules which are good for the role you have. So if you are a board member or you're very high in the management, we say, okay, read 1, 2, 4, and 5. That really, you get a good idea. If you are invited as a member association to become a coach, then module 5 is the most important one. But if you are a member of a youth group, actually I would say read all of them, but especially 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you see, we try to make it a bit easier to say, these are the things that you really have to read. Of course, you can read everything, but you can make a selection. So I think this is the first kind of impression I want to give. I think and I hope it's a very practical toolkit, and it's really pushing our ideas about youth participation, about a youth-centered approach forward in in your region. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Doortje. Now, if Paolo and Alice are ready, we'll change slides and then you have the floor.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. It's really nice to be here today with you. Thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity for being here and to present our experience regarding youth-centered approach. We started this journey about 18 months ago, I believe. And we have been coached by the Cyprus Family Planning Association. Maria is here with us today. Thank you so much, Maria, for being here. So just a few notes about APF. APF is the Portuguese Family Planning Association. It was born in 1967 when Portugal was under a very conservative and strict dictatorship. Contraception was not allowed, so a group of people gathered to fight this situation, and a lot has changed over the years. APF has grown, and we have now the headquarters in Lisbon and 6 regional branches. We have 94 staff members. We have 80 volunteers, of whom 50 are young volunteers, and 18 months ago we had none. So our 50 young volunteers are the result of the youth-centered approach implementation in APF. And we have 130 active members. So why did we decide to join youth-centered approach? We were going through the IPPF accreditation process. We had, of course, to comply with the youth governance, but we faced this question as a turning point for APF. We wanted to be meaningful, wanted this process to be meaningful, not only about complying. And we had already previous work with youth groups until 7 years ago. Then because of the financial breakdown in Portugal, we had to stop. But a lot of people really wanted to bring back young people to APF and to work again with young people. We were facing the needs to reach young people, and we didn't know how and why. We knew, but we didn't know how. We were a little bit lost. So this process really helped us to move forward and to reach young people and to engage young people in our mission. Next one, please.
Okay, so that brings us to the experience as a young person. I was invited to be part of one of APF's youth groups, and now I am also part of a regional board. And this inclusion, not only in activities in youth groups, but also in the whole decision-making process, has really led to great improvements in our association for young people and adults alike. Since becoming part of a youth group, I've had to really develop a lot of self-management tools that have undoubtedly enriched the whole experience in APF.
So talking about the process, as I mentioned before, we were coached by the Cyprus Family Planning Association. This was really an easygoing process with an association who showed a lot of expertise regarding these topics. And I'm always referring that the main the words that really talk about this process are empathy and mutual understanding. because of course we had a lot of doubts about how to implement it, how to do it. And our coach association always showed empathy and this mutual understanding, because they had already have gone through this process. So there was appropriate suggestions. And there was something that I learned in this process, that is we need to learn from young people. And this seems really basic, but actually it's not, because it represents a shift in our way of working and how we see young people. To learn from young people means that we have to be able and available to look at them as equal partners. And this is a keystone in this process.
Yeah. What was the main change you saw in your role within the MA after the implementation of the action plan? Well, I think it's really just feeling heard, feeling that our ideas and our inputs are actually taken into consideration. So we're not just complying with pre-made choices, we are actively participating in making those choices. And since the implementation of the AP, I felt a lot more freedom, and through that a lot more enthusiasm in my role, because I have that freedom to explore, to be creative, to be inventive. And we undoubtedly have more responsibilities, yes, of course, but with those responsibilities comes a whole lot of fun, a whole lot of learning and learning opportunities, and power to really target issues that we as young people believe are relevant and important for other young people to know and explore. Next.
So the most significant learnings, well, we can resume this in one sentence, and it is you have to trust young people. And to trust means that you have to empower young people. Sorry, Doortje, I know you don't like these words, but I'm always using it. It means we have to promote their skills, which means we have to train them. But this is an investment. We are investing when we are training young people. We have to learn from their experience and from their points of view. And we have to share the power and responsibility. And this is probably what causes, from my point of view, from my experience in APF, this sharing of responsibility is the most challenging issue regarding youth-centered approach. And it is this specific topic that the staff and the organization needs more training.
Then what was the main thing from the toolkit that helped you work with other young people? Well, for me, the toolkit was really, really helpful in terms of adult-youth cooperation management. As Paulo said, it's something that we need to work on. And I think there were really good advices and really concrete guidelines. Also in terms of self-management, it really gave me and my colleagues a clear idea of the whole development process and ways to actually improve that aspect of our work. There were really concrete and useful guidelines, and I think that's what you want from a toolkit.
So how did we do it? Well, first of all, we needed to engage the board in this process and to gain their trust. We haven't found any resistance. As I mentioned before, a lot of people in APF want us to bring back young people and to work with young people. We had to train staff members about youth-centered approach because this is a new perspective of working with youth. We are all very used with the expression youth-friendly, and we believe that being youth-friendly is the good we can be. This is another step. We appointed a youth staff coordinators for working with young people. And as we haven't any young volunteers in APF, we made a call for volunteers on social media. We have designed internal regulations and procedures regarding youth and young people, and we made this with young people. It's not something that is top-bottom, but it was a democratic process. A few of our staff members had also invited some young people to be volunteers. We started to talk about youth-centered approach when we were doing raising awareness sessions in schools or in universities. And as we always have to face the challenge regarding to funding, we started to include young people on the ongoing activities that were already funded. But we also helped young people to develop their own agendas and their own action plans, which means we had to listen to them and to understand what was meaningful for them, what they wanted to develop and to build in APF.
So what are we doing as young people? We are advocating for CSE. We are educating our peers in schools, and now, because of COVID-19, through social media. We produce social media. I can actually say that in my experience, my youth group has developed an Instagram page which is gaining a lot of attention. It's really great, and we're providing really good information, for example. So also we raise awareness about SRHR, obviously, and we are involved in governance and the whole decision-making process. And
sorry
now,
for jumping in. I just want to let you know that your time is almost up.
Okay, we're almost done.
If you want, great, cool.
Yeah. Is there any evidence? A few photos? You can just pass through them quickly. And there's two more. Yeah.
So, and what comes next? We don't have a lot here, and there's a reason. It's not because we are not ambitious, but because we want to plan what comes next with young people. So, we are preparing a youth meeting in APF. It was supposed to happen in July, but we are all struggling with COVID-19. So probably it will happen on Zoom in September. And in this youth meeting, we want to discuss the creation of an APF youth network, because young people are working now in their regional branches, but we want them to have a global view of APF and to have this youth network. So what do we recommend to other MA? So first of all, to trust young people because of the reasons I mentioned before, to listen to them and to understand that this is a process. It doesn't have to be perfect from the very moment. I've also learned this with Cyprus Family Planning Association. So mistakes are part of the process, and we have to learn with them and not to be scared with the possibility of making mistakes.
and also to understand that we as young people have a unique perspective of what other young people need to know, need to explore. And because we are young people, we are able to really target the issues, the main issues of our generation regarding sexual and reproductive health and rights, but also other things that we deem important. And lastly, to really, really understand that belonging and complying are two very different things, and to really put effort in making sure that young people feel like they have a relevant, important, active role in the association, rather than just being a means to an end, which is not what we want at all. That is about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, both of you, for this very comprehensive and interesting presentation. So I'll let Laura switch slides, and then we're going to begin our final part with Draško. You have now the floor.
Thanks, Manu. So, as Paolo mentioned, we've started this a long time ago, actually 2 years ago, and we were ready to launch the toolkit and the report, but yeah, everything that happened in the past months has postponed it. So I'll try to talk more about the results, what came out from this project, from this initiative. And to do that, I'll go at the beginning. 2 years ago, we've conducted 2 surveys among Y-Safe and European Network MAs. And these were the recommendations that came from those 2 surveys. That there is a need for a greater involvement of young people, especially in the development of the annual budget and annual report. That the MA is not, they need to comply with the standard of having 20% of young people on their boards, but they need to go a little bit further away. They need to raise the bar higher, and actually to enable young people to have a process in which they will elect their representatives. And most of all, as the previous speakers mentioned, to have a culture where young people and youth-centered approach are something is business as usual. So they're in all levels of the work of the member association. Next slide, please. And these were the needs that were identified at that point. So the member associations were asking for different kind of capacity building, a general one on youth-centered approach, on how to help young people to establish a youth group, how to recruit, how to keep the volunteers within the member association, how to organize the group, their work, and also to increase their self-esteem. Next slide. Also, there were some suggestions how to do this process, how to implement this process, and some expectations. So it was about learning among each other, support. There should be a support for improvement, definitely using an MA-centered approach, which is a two-way process, a process where not only the coachee can learn, but also the coach member association will be able to learn something new. So kind of a process of learning based on equal terms. And to work on strengthening the relationships between the member associations. And we started from a point of what was already developed. So Doortje has already created a very strong system, and on global level, but also we had a very strong experience here in the European network. So we have Maria today, a member association that already provided MA to MA coaching on volunteering and working with young people. And these were the objectives that we've set in front of us. So it was about to develop some kind of more tangible tools. So there were two documents, probably you know all these two documents, and the member associations, they said that they're quite well informed about these documents, but they were asking for something that might be more concrete, more tangible, something that will give examples how to do it and how to contextualize in their own environment, in their own society. Next slide. So I guess this is the moment I need to thank everybody from 15 member associations. I mean, staff, young people, they all created this. So we, as a we only tried to facilitate the process, tried to establish some kind of a platform where people can meet, discuss, and exchange knowledge and support each other. So we had member associations from Kyrgyzstan, Albania, Germany, and Cyprus as coach MAs. It was a very interesting example of Germany, where actually the member association only recently, a couple of years ago, before starting with the initiative, established a youth work and a youth network. So it was excellent having them. And then all the other coaches, from which some of them, I mean, they already could have been easily be chosen to be coach MAs because they already have good systems of how to work with young people and very strong youth groups. So having this in mind, we've asked the coach MAs what is their best skill or what they can provide best for the other ones. And then we asked the other ones what is their main need. So we've tried to match them. Also, we took in consideration the language skills, I mean, the regional specificities or political and contextual of different specific regions in Europe. So this was the way how they were matched. Next slide, please. And I'll jump probably 10 months that Doortje already covered, and I'll go to the follow-up meeting. And these were the main learnings that the member association stated. So after the pilot phase, or while the pilot phase was implemented, most of the MAs provided reports, written reports, but I also had calls with them, short interviews with youth volunteers and staff members. So they said that they found that they learned many things. For example, how to understand the difference between youth-friendly approach and the youth-centered approach, how to develop objectives and goals to work on this process and to include young volunteers, how to exchange examples and how to adapt those examples in their own context, how to involve young people in some processes where they were not involved before, but most of all, also some of them, how to communicate with the board members and how to advance the youth agenda within the organization. Next slide, please. But they had some suggestions. There was a critique and we took that in consideration. So they've asked for stronger support from the Secretariat, from our office, in the preparatory phase and setting the ground, setting the scene. They've also had some very good suggestions how to improve the tools within the toolkit. There are many tools in the toolkit. So that's why I like this toolkit. The self-assessment, the logbooks, the agenda, how to strengthen the long distance coaching. They were also, some of them asked a stronger commitment by the member association, meaning the senior staff or the board or the management to take this much more seriously. This is not a small project of the youth group. This should be a structural change. This should be about introducing a mechanism that will stay within the MA. And a stronger involvement of YSAFE. But this was more on a level how YSAFE could actually communicate the youth volunteers in the future and actually check if evaluate if this youth-centered approach is functioning in the right direction. Next slide, please. So these are the achievements. As mentioned, there were 15 MAs involved in the process of sharing knowledge and good practices. 11 of them implemented plans on improving their YCA. I need to mention that now we're in the second phase. So Maria, or Member Association Cyprus, is working with Georgia and Member Association Israel. So that phase will be finalized by November this year. There were around 170 young people involved from 9 member associations. And then again, we have the toolkit available in English and in Russian language. Next slide. But those 9 MAs implemented 6 months action plans. And these are the results from those action plans. So in many member associations, there was an update of the existing youth policies, or new ones were adopted. In many member associations, the youth groups were revived, for example, like in Portugal. And as I mentioned, in most of them, the number of new volunteers increased. There was a stronger link between the youth volunteers, the management, and the board, because most of the teams, so the staff member and the youth volunteer, came back to the MA and they organized a training about YCA. There was an increased involvement of the youth in governance. And I guess the best example for that was our member association from France. So they've done an amazing work about creating a whole strategy, how to advocate within the member association, and actually step by step to change the structures and to ensure that they have space, seats on the different committees, and to from where they can actually share their messages and take part in the decision making and the governance. Many youth-friendly working spaces were established, think so in Romania, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Latvia, and also many information communication materials, like a web page in Spain. And I was very happy to see that that web page was used and was active during the COVID crisis. So yeah, it stayed and it worked after the project was completed. Next slide, please. So yeah, these are the young activists from our member association from France. Are we changing? So at the beginning, we had, I mean, this initiative, this project is part of a discussion that started within the member association, within the network, I think in 2016. So there was a regional council and that process was led by YSafe. And the first effect that was that in 2018, we've succeeded to have 18 member associations who are complying with the standard of having 20% of young people on their boards. However, last year, we've took a step back. So now we have only 15 member associations who are complying with the standards. I mean, the number of associations who have youth on their board is much higher than 15, but they're not 20%. And this is something that we really need to take seriously in consideration and to try to find a way how to change this within our network. Next slide, please. But there is more to it. So it's not only about number. It's not only about having 2 young people sitting on a board. I mean, that's a very important message. It's a very important indicator that the MA is doing well. But there were also some other things that I'm happy to share with you. We've seen an increased involvement of young people in the member associations and in their participation in YSafe. We've seen that the young volunteers from our member associations are starting to open up and to communicate with different youth organizations out of the SRHR bubble. there was with just this week, actually, very recently, the YSafe survey was shared with you, the report. And you can see that there are diverse voices within our youth network. Also, we've heard from the surveys that actually young people are pretty much, they were the ones that were delivering the online CSC during the COVID-19 emergency. So they were the driving forces of the MA. And last year, we've also made an action plan for our office after a small training and an assessment. And we've implemented some of the activities from an action plan on YCA in the office. So now we have the YCA as part of our induction package for the new employees. And also when we are looking into the new projects, we are always looking very seriously on the component of youth-centered approach. I'm finalizing in 1 minute, man. Yep, I'm aware that I'm late. Yep. So the next steps. So we are going to finalize the phase 2. I would like to follow up with some of you on the long-term results. What's happening? How are you doing? Are you progressing with having young people on the boards, or are the mechanisms and the policies that you've established still there and respected and implemented? We need to think about addressing the needs of diverse young people in the European network. We need to open that discussion and find a way how to address that. And I want to announce that there will be a global YCA assessment, something that started last year, that is led by Central Office. And probably the next step will be to again assess the regional offices, but also to assess the member associations further on. Also, I have some questions. I mean, I'll be very happy to answer your questions after this discussion, but I also want to further on discuss how can we ensure the YCA sustainability after the coaching? How can we support you in further rolling out of the toolkit? And how can we think about having online coaching effective? Because, you know, the reality that we are now living probably would reduce the face-to-face meetings, maybe in the next 6 months as well. So to think about how should we learn from the best practices we've established during the COVID crisis and implement them with the YCA. I mean, I know nothing can be changed. Nothing can change the face-to-face contact. I'm completely aware of that. And a visit, an MA to an MA. But yeah, we need to think about this as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So that concludes our presentation, but not the webinar, because as you see, as you saw this, we're now moving to the Q&A part. So I don't think there are any questions in the chat box so far. If you have questions, please feel free to write them down and I'll read them aloud so that the speakers or anyone can answer them. Now, if someone would like to address Drashko's questions to start with, maybe. One of the speakers, I don't know.
Am I allowed to say something?
Of course, of course.
Yeah. I think it's a very good point. First of all, I was extremely impressed by the presentation. I love the presentation from Portugal. Really, my old heart was beating. The other thing, the questions of Drashko, I think the sustainability will always remain a very complex issue, and we have to understand very much what we mean by sustainability, and there will always be changes and differences and things like that. But for me, the very interesting question is this online coaching. And I think we have to maybe, you might want to consider to have a kind of annex to your toolkit is what are the pros and cons and the do's and don'ts with online coaching. I think that's maybe something you want to consider. And I'm doing it quite a lot now for countries like Myanmar and others. And I see how many mistakes I make in that as well. And you can learn a lot of what makes a good coaching online is there are do's and don'ts. And maybe you can think about that to have a kind of extra annex. Yeah? Yeah?
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add something and to build on that? I'm currently writing in the chat box Drashko's questions so everyone can see them. If anyone wants to take the floor, you have, I think, an icon to raise your hand, and then I can see you if you want to speak. Otherwise, just where do we find the toolkit? So, Drashko, please.
Yeah, I mean, I've missed to say that, and it came from a couple of people. So the toolkit will be disseminated right after this meeting and the report. So I wanted to have the first webinar and then to increase your interest to join the webinar, and then to have a possibility to see the toolkit and the report and maybe discuss it on the second part next Thursday. So that was my idea. I don't know if it will be functional. Let's see. But yeah, it will be distributed right away after this meeting.
Yes, I think, Maria, you have a question?
Yeah,
yes.
now you can hear me now. Yeah. Yeah, firstly, I felt really proud about IPPF. I think they have done a lot since we had the opportunity to do the coaching, and I really knew that it wasn't easy, and it's not easy for every MA. Regarding the sustainability of the YCA toolkit, I don't know, maybe Drashko can correct me if I'm wrong. I can't recall whether it's introduced as a standard within the accreditation process. It is, right? Or not? I can't recall, although I'm going through this, but my mind is all over. Drashko?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's part of the
I think it's,
so
I think, I know that sometimes, you know, we are going through the accreditation, and there are things that are in place. So MAs are stating that, yes, we have adopted the toolkit and we have done this and that. So maybe because the accreditation process is a process that is implemented every 5 years. So maybe we can think of having like a monitor and evaluation, I don't know, process within that 5 years. So it's not about putting, I don't know, pressure or having the control over MAs, but it's to ensure that what they are saying, this is what we are saying, we are doing it. So maybe we think of a process within that 5 years to go back to them and review whether they're implementing.
Yeah, so what I can say is that we are very closely working with our accreditation department with SWAZIC. So in one part, when we started doing this, we also approached some of the member associations who were not complying with the standard, offering this support. And we are doing that now as I think it's a new thing within the accreditation. Now we have a system, so it's always offered to the member associations who maybe at that point of time, as Doortje said, are struggling with establishing a youth group or working with young people. So I think we are linked in a way. Maybe there should be, you know, a continuous monitoring. That might be a good idea, but yeah, in a way it's functional.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add something?
Yes, of course.
Well, regarding the first question about sustainability, from my experience, having an action plan and committing to an action plan was really, really important. Because it implies, it helps me to organize my work, to organize the association view about the work we are developing. So it's really, really helpful.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone wants to react on that, but we have Darcy telling us that the new board of trustees, or she suspects that the new board of trustees will review the accreditation process as well.
Yeah. Can I
Doortje?
say something? Sure. Yeah, I like very much what was said about an action plan, but it's also about money at the end of the day, that you need someone who also wants to say, we are very good in saying how things are important, but you need to allocate in your budget, your yearly budget, you need some allocation for that. Or central office or whoever needs to support in the allocation of some funding for that, because it's a lot of work anyway. And so we have to think about money. And I think there's a new, those new trustees, I think they should also be pushed. I'm not sure who are all the new trustees, but they maybe need to be trained, or I don't know if you can train them, but to understand what a youth-centered approach is, because I'm not 100% sure that they all will know. I mean, they're probably fantastic people, but I think a lot of people still think about youth as youth involvement, and they can have a say, things like that. But to really understand about the culture is a different thing. So maybe you have to suggest that the trustees need to have a kind of half-day kind of induction in a youth-centered approach as well. I would really suggest that. And I'm sure they, well, I hope that they are open to that.
Thank you. That's a very interesting point. Fiona is asking, could it be possible to connect young board members to share their experiences and support each other? Or is there already an approach in that direction? If anyone wants to take the floor.
I can. Well, there was no specific way how to do it. Usually, the youth board members had the opportunity to meet during the regional councils, but now that is in a process of amendment. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that with sharing of our mutual work, probably there will be an open space for young people that are involved in governance to connect. And some of them were involved in the processes. Some representatives on the boards in the MAs that were involved in the Youth-Centered Approach initiative were there. But this is a good idea to be taken in consideration, how to establish that contact a little bit much more stronger. So thank you for that.
Thank you. If anyone else wants to build on that, otherwise we had a comment from Uluk. Are there any other questions? No. Okay. Well, I did have a question that maybe is a little more for Alice, since you're involved. I was wondering if maybe you would be comfortable sharing how, as young people, this experience and your involvement has had an impact on you, or has empowered you, maybe?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
I think having this opportunity to be an active asset in an association brings about so many social and intersocial competences. I feel like I've developed a whole set of tools that will help you that will help me not only in my day-to-day life, but in my educational life, in my learning life. I think having the power and the empowerment to decide things, to actively make choices, and to be aware that I have the power to change some things regarding my sexual and health rights and all those things. It shapes what I am as a person, what I am as a peer educator. And yes, I think it's just extremely enriching. And throughout this whole process of YCA, I've really felt like I've developed myself, and I've helped other young people develop themselves. And yes, that's about it. I don't know if that answers your question more or less.
It does, thank you. We have another question. Do you have plans to expand YC Toolkit by concrete examples of coach and coachee MAs, like some case studies? Is there a speaker to take the floor?
Not sure that I completely understand the question. I mean, we will offer the toolkit now to, and this mechanism that was established to the other member associations of the network. But I guess it would be also available for the entire IPPF, the whole federation. We might think about how to provide an advanced, improved support to other member associations. Some of the case studies, in a way, on a level of presenting results from each of the countries and projects, are part of the toolkit. So we had a series of case studies presented in the toolkit. That's the way how we wanted to make this more tangible. This is how another MA ensured that young people are part of the board, and also part of the report. So we have a couple of examples in the report. So, but yeah, I don't know if that answered the question. So yeah, I'm ready to provide more info.
And just I'm jumping on that to remind that for a more specific details regarding the coach and coachee process, we'll probably talk about that in more detail next week. So maybe also part of the question will be addressed then. I'm thinking about the concrete examples. Anything else? Okay, otherwise I had another question. This one is maybe a bit more general, but we are coming out of a very important crisis. So the COVID crisis, I'm sure no one ignores. And we've seen, especially across Europe, very strong responses from governments which have taken the pandemic as an excuse to strengthen their the repressive measures on SRHR. And I wanted to know how this had an impact maybe on youth, and how youth has been able to raise again that kind of measures, or if that calls for also, this is a very good reason to involve more people, more young people who are maybe more sensitive to that issues than people in the establishment. Doortje, I see you nod, if you want to take the floor.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very, very good question. And I'm totally agreeing with you about that. I fear the same. And I think we need youth groups now more than ever to push for a positive approach to sexuality, a rights-based approach to comprehensive sex education, access to services, because I think both the Me Too campaign and now COVID will really have an impact on how people can use this against the sexuality of young people. And I think I'm a little bit too old for that. I'm 70, but if I only could think about to start a new kind of movement to that sex is something good and something beautiful, and that if we think about the mental health suffering there has been because of COVID and because of this, no government said anything about sex. It's unbelievable in all their all their kind of information. Only in the Netherlands, when we started pushing the government, you have to say something about sex, and not just about whether you could visit a sex worker, but how can you still, you know, keep your sanity and talk about masturbation online, or whatever what we can say, to remain safe online, on dating online, on whatever. But to have a kind of new kind of sexual revolution to say, we're not going to get people to restrict us again in the freedoms and the rights we have achieved before COVID. So if anybody wants, I really would help you to start that movement. And it begins with having the messages right in our education and information. And you do so much on social media. I think that's where I think you could do enormous lot. And I'm collecting a lot of materials from around the world, how they give positive messages about sexuality and COVID. So if you are interested, I can send you anything I have collected. But I think you're probably much further than I am, but I think you are so right. We should not just ignore this, because I think we should nip it in the bud and say, we won't get people to take away the freedoms and the rights just because of COVID. And if you see all those people on television, all these men, you know, and talking about, you know, how we should behave, and they don't even dare to say the word sex or masturbation. It's unbelievable, right? Well, that's on people's mind. Sorry, I'm a bit too passionate about it. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's very, very interesting. And Alice, do you have something to add?
Yes. About what you've just said. In my youth group, we did about a whole month about sexting and the ways to do it safely. And I think...
Oh, is it just me, or I think we've lost Alice? Okay.
Is this censorship or something?
must be. We're being hacked.
Joking.
Okay, waiting that she comes back online. I'm jumping on what you said, Doortje. I mean, that's very, very relevant intervention, and especially the bit on social media. I'm most familiar with English speaking and French social media, especially on Instagram, that has become in the last years also a militant space, with a number of accounts actually doing some almost public work of sexual education through accounts that promote a pleasure-based approach to sexuality and something very positive. And there is also an intersectionality that we find on these online spaces that is much more accessible and also reaches young people. So I think it's also a very important space, and more and more associations are developing that kind of tools because it's also really, really efficient. And most, maybe not most, but a lot of civil society movements, social movements are also being organized online, where the spaces are free from censorship or from restrictions, and where people who we do not see on debates in mainstream medias, who do not get interviews in a newspaper, or who aren't invited to debate on TV, have a space and have a voice. So it was a very good point. So Alice is still not back online, but if no one has anything to add to this, oh yes, Alice is back. Great.
Hi.
Cool.
I have no idea what happened. I'm on my phone because my computer doesn't work. Anyway, sorry. what did you hear me say? Where did I stop?
I think that cut at the very beginning.
Okay, so I'm just gonna recap everything.
Sure.
So I was saying that in my youth group, we spent a whole month talking about sexting. And now, Doortje, you've just talked about doing that initiative and talking about sex right now in the middle of this crisis. And I think that's a really, really important thing. And I would love to work on that with my youth group. So if you could send me things, I totally appreciate it, because I think that's a really, really wonderful idea. That was just it. Sorry.
Thank you. I think if we have resources to share, we can also do it and put them in the open space for everyone. So we had another question. Online coaching could also help on monitoring the process by learning at what stage the MA are, what support they need, and inputs on how to advance. So a question on online coaching, maybe that was also raised, I think, by Doortje earlier. Anyone to answer?
Thanks, Juna. I think this is a good suggestion, and this is what we were trying to do in the second phase of the coaching process. We'll talk about that next week. But the first phase was a face-to-face meeting, and then the second phase was a distant online coaching exercise. But yeah, organizing it in this way might be useful, and even extending it after the period of the project. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Doortje. Any other questions or things to add? We're not exactly at the end of the Q&A session, so we still have time to go through some elements that were asked. Otherwise, I had a question, one more, where it has been said also that sometimes it was hard to implement the YCA or maybe to reach young people. So it's also a general question for MAs, or what do you think maybe in your experience are the obstacles the hardest to overcome, and how to reach young people also to make sure that this gives a momentum to the YCA, because again, it's not, the aim of it is not to be a punctual thing, but something that stands the test of time. So are there any leads on how to, again, increase sustainability and try to overcome the obstacles that can arise?
Can I? Well, considering our experience, and we have tried several strategies for recruiting young people. We have tried the call for volunteers on social media. We have invited specific young people for our youth groups. But what works the best is when we publicly present our intervention, what we are doing, and why do we want to bring young people for our intervention, and why is it meaningful for us, and what can they add to our intervention. And it's really nice to understand that young people want to volunteer when they see that they can bring their own ideas to the MA. It's not just about doing what we want them to do. They can bring their ideas, they can have their own perspectives, they can organize themselves with the support from the MA, but they can implement their own ideas regarding sexual and reproductive health. For instance, for us, it's a surprise that many people who come to APF want to work in LGBTI rights. And we haven't done much in this matter, or in specific projects in this matter. And it's a surprise to see that young people consider that this one of the most misrepresented issues in sexual and reproductive rights, and want to help us to address these specific questions with their own tools, their own strategies, and they're making wonderful work. So I believe that it's easier to recruit young people when they understand that their participation will be meaningful.
Thank you. Maria? Sure.
Something that is really quite essential is for BMAs to have at least one member of the staff who is dedicated to volunteer management, has no other obligations. I mean, it needs to be someone that is dedicated to the volunteers. So in order to be the point of reference, to provide training, support, and all this stuff. And for me, it's quite essential. It's not, that this person needs to have really good communication skills, and because it needs to be someone that will gain their trust, and it will inspire them, and of course to work within the philosophy of the youth-centered approach.
Thank you. I was also thinking, because when the young people are involved at some point, young people age and then are obviously not regarded as young people anymore, but maybe there's also, there also could be a system of kind of coach and coachee between the people who are exiting the program and people who are entering, so to make sure that the legacy is passed through. That was just an idea. And we have another question from Adir. Are there any MAs which added a video consulting option to that repertoire of helping teens? If so, can you give us any advice? So this is more a question for MAs. Maybe Paulo or other MAs representatives?
Well, we haven't implemented this strategy, so I cannot advise on this topic, but it's really an interesting question.
Thank you. Doortje, of course.
Well, I think, Drasko, you were there also. There was this big meeting in Istanbul earlier this year from UNESCO to talk about sex education online. And there were some examples of that. So we might want to try to find those, Drasko, of this kind of supporting online. I'm not sure whether all of them were very good, but there were some interesting examples from the rest of the world where young people were helped online by their peers as well. Isn't it, Drasko? I will have a look and see if there are some examples.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there were even, you know, but then we are talking about, you know, sexual and reproductive health, sexuality education. So if it's about help or gender-based violence and so on. I was about youth-centered approach, and I know that.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
No, it's fine. It might go for, yeah, because it's a general.
Yeah, I thought helping teens.
So
thought,
yeah, and they were I know that in Bosnia they developed videos. So it was the part of the project. So they developed a video how to actually present the work of the volunteers within their member association, and it was developed by the young people. And if it's for a specific topic, there are many examples. So we know that RFSU from Sweden has it. We know that Rutgers has a couple of different platforms for helping teens either from cyberbullying or sexuality education. So there are many, but if either you want to know some of a specific topic, please send me an email, yeah.
Okay, I will, thank you.
All right, so we're practically at the end of the Q&A session. So it's the last moment for questions. Are there any things or comments just really to point something? Apparently not. Okay, just know that if you have questions, we can also answer them afterwards, after the seminar. So really feel free to make any comments and questions. Dreshko?
Just to ask everybody to join us on Thursday and to invite other people. So yeah, we might, if some questions come up in the next 7 days, we'll be there to respond. Yeah. So next, just to announce that next week we'll have Maria, Doortje, and representatives from the Ukrainian Member Association, a youth volunteer. So we'll talk about the coaching process. How does that work? And you know, how can we improve that? And if you have any questions about that, please join us.
And to conclude also, if you have any comments, not on the content, but on how we did the webinar, if there are any problems, if you've experienced any, I don't know, discomfort of difficulties with using Zoom or whatever, please also let us know so we can try to fix it for next week. So really feel free to drop us an email for this. And otherwise, I think it's fine. So maybe, Dreshko, you want to say a few concluding words before we all say goodbye?
No, I only want to say thank you to the speakers, Doortje, to Paul, and to Alice, and to everybody that joined us today. So this is only the start of the discussion, so let's continue next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a big round of applause. So yes, thank you, and congratulations to everyone who spoke and for the very, very interesting questions. And well, this concludes our first part webinar. And as we said, it was recorded, so I think you'll have the possibility also to find again. Yes, Dreshko?
One more thing. So a huge thanks to you for facilitating this meeting, and Laura, who was behind this, helping us with the presentation and so on. So thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And hopefully see you all next week for the second part, where we will talk about the coach and coaches program. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. See you next week.